So as you might notice, the title of this video is not We Did Watch List September 2020. I know. I'm living in a hell, and now you're a part of it. So I was gonna... Everything changes. Everything changes. I can't decide on a fucking video. I always want to do something different. Like, I'll be partway through one project and then I'll decide I want to do something else. So, fuck it. We just don't have a structure anymore. I'm just gonna make what I want when I want it. Okay? I think everyone's alright with that. Alright? I'm okay with it. You're okay with it. With that said, I want to do a couple Halloween videos. I've got one that I'm doing right now. We'll see if I get to the other one. I'm never going to keep a promise, so... When I think about what makes a movie scary, I generally feel like if a movie's more realistic, I can invest and I can find it a lot more terrifying. So typically I can put aside my genuine fear for something like Alien or Halloween. It feels like fiction. It's like a layer of distorted glass that I'm seeing the events through. It makes me feel a lot less scared because I'm like, oh, I can just sort of settle in. It's not really happening. This also means you can't expect me to be frightened by a cheap jump scare, which as a result, when I reflect on the movies that really put me off, there's only a handful that I can consider to be genuinely scary. The one movie that frightens me the most is the Blair Witch Project. The first part of the video is going to be me convincing you to watch the movie if you haven't already, and if you've seen it already, that's what the second half of the video is about. Or if you just don't give a shit and you want to watch a Halloween-themed video, stick around. So to me, it's very important to give you the background on this movie. I think one of the most significant factors that plays into that is the viral marketing campaign. It was really like a trendsetter at the time. It had its own website about the Blair Witch, and all the posters for the movies were missing posters for the main characters. It was one of the most realistic marketing campaigns ever, to the point that Heather Donahue's mom received letters of condolence because people actually thought her daughter went missing in the woods. So that's what you've got going into this movie. And the actors were told to remain out of the public eye until a little bit after the movie had happened to invest the audience. And at the time, it worked. It was very realistic for the time. And I'll get into the realism a little more as we talk about the movie itself, but there's a little more background to go into. The budget of this movie was significantly lower than other horror films at the time. In fact, the filmmakers returned the camera that they used to extend their budget that much further. Aside from the marketing and budget, the movie was filmed in one of the most unconventional ways that I have ever heard of. What goes into making a movie like The Blair Witch Project is different than any other film. There was no script for any of the actors. Everything they said was improvised, pretty much. They only had the mythology that was written in a 35-page manuscript, which they believed was real. It wasn't until after the movie they learned that the whole thing had been fabricated by the directors. Instead of building sets, the actors had specific instructions to get to, campsites. The cameras were operated largely by the actors themselves, which it makes the movie look rough, as it should. So rough that sometimes people get motion sickness from watching the movie. You get a little shake, and then you... It was the birth of the found footage genre. Now, years later, it's really easy to look at this and say, it's nothing special, because we've seen movies since then that have had upscaled budgets and that want to do the same thing. Some argue that other movies do it better, but for me, it's the beginning and end. You can say that this is boring, but to me, it's exhilarating. A lot of people just think it's three people running through the woods and it's really boring. And yeah, it is three people running through the woods and arguing, but that's not all the movie is. they're giving their truth in the movie. That's part of why their performances feel so realistic. It was orchestrated by the directors, but it wasn't orchestrated by the actors, so their performance felt real. So that's all the background. I know it was really messy, but that, like I said, that's how I do this shit. So if that wasn't enough to persuade you into watching the movie, I don't think anything will. You know, if you're excited, go watch it right now. If you're not, stick around. Alright, now I'm going to move into the next part where I spoil the shit out of it to make a point. Alright, now that you understand the background and how the movie was made, my hope is that it contextualizes the rest of the movie so that I can illustrate what I feel about it. So I'll just describe a few of the major beats that stick with me every time it comes to mind. I'm also fresh off of a rewatch from earlier this month, so the ending scene when Mike and Heather go looking for Josh in the abandoned house is one of the most bone-chilling finales to any movie I've ever seen. When I first saw it in high school, I, had to keep pausing it. I invested in the story the first time I watched it. It's dark in this house, and as they're running around, you can hear Josh yelling unintelligible phrases. I'm pretty sure that was on purpose. And the tension, to me, is so palpable you could cut through it with a knife. So Mike gets got by the witch, who we never catch a glimpse of, by the way. We were supposed to see 2 seconds of footage of the witch, but that never happened. And then Heather goes down to the basement, and we can hear her screaming because the mic is on the camera that Mike is using, so we can hear her screaming from upstairs, and it's really muffled, and that's part of what's scary about it. And when Heather is down in the basement, he's standing in the corner and facing into it. It's spooktacular, and it'll turn your gray pants brown. The reason I want to discuss this scene first is because it harkens back to things said by the townspeople in the beginning of the movie. It's great setup and payoff, and it's not something you're really thinking about until you get there, and then you see it, and it's like, ugh. Even, just watching the movie, and at the beginning they say that shit, I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Finally, one day, old Mr. Parr come down into the market and said, I'm finally finished.
And what did he mean by that?
Well, I guess nobody knew at first, but the police finally went up on the mountain, and they searched his house, and they found the bodies of 7 kids from the area.
It's just such a subtle reincorporation, and then when you get there, it's like, holy shit. I just love it. Reportedly, they made several different endings to the movie. I'm glad they went with this one, because it actually really hammers home how much restraint the filmmakers had from just, having, I don't know, I don't even know what you would do instead of this. I'm sure, I haven't seen the footage myself of the other alternate endings. I probably should have before making this video, but the point is, I don't think you could end a movie better than that, because how else would you end it? Another aspect of this movie that makes me like it so much better than other found footage horror is its lack of a script. Instead of scripting everything that happens, the directors facilitate moments. Part of why it works so well is the chemistry between the actors makes sense. The way that they play off of each other feels so natural.
Okay, here's your motivation. You're lost. You're angry in the woods, and no one here is here to help you. There's a fucking witch, and she keeps leaving shit outside your door. There's no one here to help you. She left little trinkets. You fucking took one of them. She ran after us. There's no one here to help you. We walked for 15 hours today. We ended up in the same place. There's no one here to help you. That's your motivation. That's your motivation!
They were deliberately given, less food every day so that they would argue more amongst themselves. There's a scene where, first in this scene, you hear, baby noises in the background. Which, brown pants, obviously, if it were just babies out there, they could kick them, but it's the directors shake the tent, and so when the actors scream, it's a genuine terror. It genuinely heightens the fear factor for me, because I watch a movie like Creep, and I don't like it because there's a script and the characters are stupid, and so I don't... And they're not acted well in either of those movies, so it makes me just not believe anything that's happening. But here, I just believe it, because it's like, oh, you're really acting out of fear. You think this fucking witch is real. The use of sound within the movie is also super compelling. There's no background music, it's just the ambience of the woods, really. The disappearance of Josh at the end of the second act is an especially scary moment, because if you think about that in real life, like, you're just in the woods and then one of your friends just disappears. Like, I want no part of that. It'll make you not want to go camping for a while. It's not hard to feel it yourself as an audience member. The use of his screams as well later in the movie and the gibberish that he says, it can only lead you to imagine what happened to him and why he's making these noises. Ugh, it just freaks me the fuck out. Speaking of being freaked the fuck out, the use of gore is limited to one scene, and it's one of the most brilliant uses of gore in any horror movie. So Josh disappears, Heather wakes up, and she finds a bundle of sticks outside of the tent, and they're tied together with parts of Josh's flannel. Heather has a cigarette with Mike and returns to the bundle. It makes sense to me why she would like take a break from investigating the bundle, because it's like, I would do that shit as well. It's like every decision feels like it makes sense. Anyway, she opens the bundle. She reacts appropriately by like hyperventilating and crying.
It's all full of blood.
It's the only time we see blood in the movie, but like I said, it's a great use because man, does your imagination spin a yarn after that. Like, what became of Josh is something we can only speculate. And then one of the most upsetting scenes in the movie for me is where Heather talks to the camera and apologizes for getting them all lost in the woods.
I just want to apologize to Mike's mom and Josh's mom. And my mom. And I'm sorry to everyone.
It's so gripping because we as the audience, we know that no one's going home at the end of this. They say it at the beginning of the movie. And it's hard to watch Heather so unhinged and afraid, and even just like thinking about it right now, I want to like turn on an episode of The Simpsons and just not think about this shit because it's scary. It's a great moment of empathetic horror where we identify with the character and the fear that they are no doubt feeling in this moment. And I don't think it's ever been replicated better anywhere else than here. There's a reason that it's the image on the poster. I always watch this scene and I want it to end differently than it does, if that makes sense. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. It's a scary fucking movie. Brown pants. I only have two major complaints. Really only one with the actual film. The camera work obviously is not great, as I talked about. This, of course, is because the camera operators don't run camera professionally, so that's why it's rough like that. My other complaint is, why the fuck isn't the original 4:3 aspect ratio available on digital? Not that it would look better on a Blu-ray because of how rough the footage is to begin with, but I've bought this movie 2 times on 2 different platforms, and both versions that I have are cropped to 16:9. So about 20% of the image is just gone. Don't know what that's about. What the oh, it doesn't fit my TV, so I'm gonna change it. Really? All the old SpongeBob episodes are available in 4:3. Why not this? Anyway, I really do hope that I could persuade some of you into watching this movie because I do think it's truly special. Even though I don't think it's the best horror movie that's ever been made, it's my scariest because it's so real and I invest every time that I see it. And others, I hope I could persuade you into seeing it in a new light. I know it's not everyone's favorite, but it's one of mine, and I will watch it every Halloween. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I'll try to be more consistent about uploading in the future because this is an important endeavor to me. I'm just not good at keeping up with it as much as I'd like to.